10 in particular, practically touching the sea.
Yeah, but that's Phillip Island in that way, and hopefully we get the race that we get Phillip Island as well. But I think this weekend in Indonesia, it's going to be all about trying to see if you're able to get the right fees to make up.
So he could do with Toprak being relegated behind Reading, but if the reverse is true and Jonathan Ray finishes third behind Toprak Razgatlioglu, game over.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things, that Scott can be that spoiler through the course this weekend. We've seen it all the way through, that he competitive on him. You can see there, just gets a bit of a kick from the bike as it comes to a time sheet over behind. So, Toprak, he's caution, is it? That's about as Toprak gets.
Is that a situation that could play against him this weekend, though? We've talked about the fact that it is a big point swing that Jonathan Ray has got to make up. Now, the circumstances in which Ray can make up those points, most likely a retirement for Toprak. Wet weather conditions, those have been very few things that have played against Toprak at times, most notably in past seasons, but on a couple of times in 2021 as well. Or Toprak making an error. Now, it hasn't happened so far this season. It is possible that he could get into some mischief.
Well, I think you have to look at how many times we've seen Toprak and Jonathan Ray rubbing tyres with one another. How many times we've seen them side by side, bar to bar, all the way through this season. All it takes is a slight misjudgment, or one rider leaning into the other a little bit more, and suddenly you get neck. So for Toprak, that's probably the biggest factor over the course of this weekend. Is he going to change his riding and his race style? I don't think so. That's not how Toprak is. But we could easily have an incident between those two riders, because we've seen so much close action between all the way through this season.
He changed his approach. He only needed to set the position in the last race of the season.
I think if it's Sunday, he changed approach, but it's going to be tough for Toprak to do that. He's very adamant. He wants to stick to his guns and win the championship the way that he's been riding all the way through this season. And I think
and it would certainly not be something that would go against the grain, as it were. He's never pulled his punches throughout his WSBK career, and certainly not this season.
Yeah, and it's one of those situations where for Toprak, he knows how he's managed to get into this position, and he knows that on his day he's pretty much unbeatable. And I think he wants to make sure that this weekend he lays down a marker and shows that that's exactly what he's going to expect all the way through.
If anything, he's added a level to that since Assen in particular, a weekend where he was caught in the garage saying that's it, the championship's over. It was almost as if at that moment he said, well, from here on in, nothing to lose, because the championship in his mind, well, okay, in the heat of the moment, looked like it was slipping away from him. Jonathan Ray, 3 wins in a row, Toprak a massive margin of points to recover. Twice he's managed to recover points and get back into the lead of this World Championship, and it's a lead that at the moment he doesn't look like surrendering.
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations where Toprak will look at the points that have gone amiss for him from a bit of bad luck. Jonathan Ray will look at the points that have gone away from him, and more often than not for Jonathan, it's been because of his own mistakes. He's had to ride on the limit. Those 30 points added up very quickly for him, and over the course of the year, the two riders have been very evenly matched. But you'd have to say, on the balance side, the season's gone. Toprak very much does win the championship decider with a pretty sizable advantage.
Those 2 retirements in Portimao in particular, very, very costly, both from front-running positions, of course. Earlier in the season, we mentioned Donington Park, race 2, race 1, all of those costly in terms of points. Ironically, when Jonathan Ray's typical strategy of just banking podiums would have left him there or thereabouts going into this final round with Toprak Razgatlioglu. This season that Ray's mistakes have crept in for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, but the same could be said for Toprak as well. He's left as many points on the table as Jonathan Ray, and he's done it by his misfortune. Obviously, some of them being mechanical issues, and you have to accept that whenever you're racing as part of a team. But I think for Jonathan Ray, obviously, he look at this as being a champion that he's lost an awful lot of points going into the final round. But now it's up to him just to be able to focus on trying to put some pressure on Toprak this weekend and see what happens.
Toprak's sort of mission moments, isn't he? 137.337 for Toprak last time around. Jonathan Ray second fastest on the timesheets at the moment and over a second behind. So Toprak, the usual style of Toprak Razgatlioglu making his way into the heaviest braking zone on the circuit in towards turn 1.
Yeah, Toprak doing Toprak things there in the run into T1, and he's got a 1.3 second advantage at this stage, which, you know, you'd have to look at it and think that everyone else is building themselves up a little bit slower than Toprak, but certainly for Razgatlioglu, he's feeling confident right now and wants to make sure that he's able to use all of his track time to get something to show for it.
Yes, absolutely. The faster you go right from the start, the less there is to find, although Toprak's managed to find another quarter of a second on his latest lap around, so he's not shy, that's for sure, at the start on Rio Circuit.
No, and what's interesting is there's a few other riders that have been able to set some pretty decent times at the start of this session. Isaac Viñales on the number 32 Kawasaki and Axel Bassani on the Ducati as well, both up inside the top 5 at this stage. We're only a couple of laps in, but you can see for Viñales, he's going to be keen to maintain the form that he showed last time out in Argentina, because Portimao in Argentina, he made a big step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. First top 10 finish in Portimao. He then qualified in 11th for the Argentinian round, which was a solid display. So certainly a little bit closer towards the sharp end, towards the top 10, Isaac Viñales. Top 10, not easy to break into in World SBK in 2021, such as the depth of field and such as the number of factory rides there as well.
Yeah, I was talking to a few riders about it actually, and especially in the Super Bowl race, where you have to finish inside top to score points, give yourself a good grid position for race 2. And a lot of riders saying, you know what, it's hard to score points in that race now. Whenever we first introduced it, it was quite easy for the top riders, the factory riders, to be able to score their points. But now you look at it and you see the likes of Bassani there in the number 47 Ducati. He sprung a lot of surprises through the course of this season. You've obviously got all of your factory bikes from Ducati, Yamaha, Kawasaki, all very competitive. Honda being able to get some good results as well. So it is really difficult to try and get yourself into those top 10 positions now.
Yes, last season we had a habit of talking about the regular top 6. This season, to be perfectly honest, we've had a regular top 10 or so of riders. Toprak still steaming on, still over a second faster than anyone else has been able to go in this free practice 1 so far. Remember the first session at this Mandalika international circuit in Indonesia, 136.543 for Razgatlioglu, and a high 1 minute 37 for Michael Ruben Rinaldi. Ducati's second and third positions at the moment, having moved past Jonathan Ray. So Razgatlioglu getting his pace down very quickly. That's the last of it.
And it's those 1 minute 36s for Toprak now, and see there may be an issue for Álvaro Bautista, and we'll see if he's able just to get himself back to the pits at this stage. And certainly for Honda, there was some big news during the gap between Argentina and this weekend with the confirmation of their rider lineup for next year.
Yes, Iker Lecuona and Xavi Vierge will join HRC for 2022 onwards. We already knew that both Leon Haslam and Álvaro Bautista were departing. Bautista departing, frankly, because he wanted to move back to Ducati machinery, on which he was so successful in the 2019 campaign, of course, with that run of victories at the start of the season in particular. And looks like Leon Haslam, although he appeared keen to stay, was not the first choice. Very different philosophy for HRC at the moment, to try and pull riders across from the MotoGP paddock in a hope of giving themselves an elusive world championship.
Yeah, I was asking Leon Camier about that, the team manager, and he said that they are making that change in philosophy for next year, bringing in 2 young riders. Obviously 2 years spent with Álvaro Bautista and Leon Haslam has brought that package quite a bit forward, but now they want to try and make that next step, and making that change of riders. I was asking him, had in World SBK. So as a rider, how is that to make that change? How is it to make that transition? And Camier said, a bike's a bike, and you've got to be able to figure out how to get the most from it. Obviously, learning the Pirellis is going to be a bit of a struggle for them, but that's going to be the big task. And what we've seen from the likes of Andrew, we got a crasher there, and it looks like it's Oliver Koenig that's gone down.
Making his debut this weekend in World SBK, Koenig. With just over 30 minutes remaining in free practice 1. It is Koenig who has gone down just on the exit of one of the chicanes by the looks of things.
Yeah, you can see Oliver there. He's in what looks like Cresson's leathers, but certainly it is Oliver that's gone down. He does actually have some superbike experience. He raced in the Endurance World Championship at Moss at the season closing round this year, and actually was pretty competitive on it. But you can see there, just gets a bit of a kick from the bike there as it comes to a halt. That's through turn 3, so right at the start of the lap, that little bit of a flip-flop.
Yes, so we were quite rightly cautious there, trying to ascertain whether the number and the name didn't quite match up, but we called it. Oliver Koenig then going down. World SBK debut, as we've said, this weekend. And as you said, Steve, as well, it looks on paper like a very big step, doesn't it, to go straight from Supersport 300 into World SBK. And he may well find that's the case as well, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a real tough task. Half an hour of track time is really bad for any rider rider over the course of a race weekend. But if this is the first time he's been on the World SBK machine, it's even more important for Coonan just to be able to get himself back out there.
Just a quick word, Loris Cresson, of course, suffering injuries earlier on in this campaign. Just over 30 minutes remaining in this free practice one. And it's Toprak Razgatlioglu who leads the way by 0.8 of a second ahead of Michael Ruben Rinaldi. Jonathan Ray, third fastest. So the gap has come down between Razgatlioglu and the rest.
Yeah, it's going to come right down now as well, with Rinaldi on a very fast lap here as well. So Toprak's time at 36.5. He's got 0.8 of a second in hand on Rinaldi, but as you'd expect from the Italian, he's going to get faster and faster through the course of this session. This looks like it's going to be right up there as well. Loses a lot of time in that final sector though.
He was up at the halfway mark of his latest lap, so as you say, just that final sector which features the slowest corner on the circuit. I suspect that could be a place for a penultimate bend lunge, not a last bend lunge, but a penultimate bend lunge in towards turn 16.
Yeah, and certainly we're going to see it all the way through this weekend. If anything's close, that's when I'm going to try and make it through from the last lap, because you can really barge down the inside and make that block pass.
Yes, and defend track position and through the final turn, a short squirt to the line. So it should be action-packed here at the Indonesian round. It's always exciting to come to a new place, and the first for in a generation really to come to Indonesia. There won't be many in this paddock who were still around in the mid-1990s, who had the opportunity to head just outside Jakarta. More straightforward, I suppose, without the extra domestic flies, but not too many that were part of that generation, and certainly hot riders. So